This isn't a story about reaching the South Pole, it's a story about what it truly costs to chase it. The Worst Journey in the World. By Apsley Cherry-Garrard's Antarctic epic. In the frozen, merciless heart of Antarctica, survival was never guaranteed, and neither was glory. The Worst Journey in the World is not just a chronicle of polar exploration, it is a raw, intimate testimony of courage, suffering, and the unbearable weight of loss. Prelude to Adventure. A man without a map. Apsley Cherry-Garrard was not the typical explorer. Nearsighted, young, and without the scientific qualifications of his peers, he seemed an unlikely candidate for one of the most dangerous expeditions of the modern age. Yet driven by a deep sense of purpose, admiration for science, and a personal need to contribute to something greater, Cherry joined Captain Robert Falcon Scott's Terra Nova expedition to Antarctica, 1910–1913. His account, The Worst Journey in the World, would not only become a landmark of travel literature but also a raw, deeply human memoir of courage, fear, suffering, and loyalty amidst the world's most unforgiving environment. Chapter 1. Dreams of Glory, the Birth of the Terra Nova Expedition. The British Empire had long been fascinated by Antarctica. By 1910, national pride and scientific interest pushed Captain Scott to lead another expedition, determined not only to reach the South Pole but also to bring back a wealth of biological and geological specimens. Cherry, who initially applied and was rejected, donated £1,000 to the expedition, an act that impressed Scott and gained him a place. He joined a crew of officers, scientists, and sailors who carried with them dreams of discovery and honor. The voyage of the Terra Nova ship itself was fraught with peril, from crushing seas and pack ice to logistical nightmares. Yet the real trial began once they made landfall in Antarctica. Chapter 2. Establishing Base Camp, Building a Home in a Frozen Hell. Cape Evans became the headquarters, a wooden hut built to shelter the men from temperatures that would drop to -60 degrees Fahrenheit. Though they tried to recreate routines of domestic life, meals, card games, chores, the psychological pressure of isolation, darkness, and the ever-present threat of frostbite weighed heavily. They practiced sledging, managed supplies, and studied the terrain. Each man had a task, from meteorological recording to dog handling, but underlying it all was the ticking clock: who would be chosen for the final push to the South Pole. Chapter 3. The Winter Journey, Into Darkness for Penguin Eggs. In June 1911, during the depths of the Antarctic winter, Cherry volunteered to join Wilson and Bowers on a side mission, to retrieve emperor penguin eggs. These eggs, believed to offer insights into evolutionary theory, could only be collected during the brutal winter nesting season. What followed was a 5-week journey in total darkness, howling winds, and unspeakable cold. Their clothes froze, the sledges shattered, and food was barely sufficient. Tents became brittle coffins of ice. Every step forward was a battle. Cherry's teeth shattered in his mouth. Their survival often relied on sheer willpower. Yet they accomplished their goal, retrieving 3 penguin eggs, and somehow, miraculously, returned alive. But the trauma would haunt Cherry forever. Years later, scientists dismissed the eggs' importance. The suffering endured seemed for nothing. Chapter 4. The Final Dash. Scott's Polar Party sets out. By the Antarctic summer of 1911–1912, the great race for the South Pole began. Roald Amundsen, the Norwegian rival, was already underway. Scott's team split into groups, gradually ferrying supplies and rotating crew members as they advanced. Eventually, Scott selected 4 men to accompany him. On the final leg: Wilson, Bowers, Oates, and Evans. They left the others behind, including Cherry, who turned back with orders to support future resupply efforts. In January 1912, the 5 men reached the pole, only to discover Amundsen's flag. The Norwegians had beaten them by over a month. Chapter 5. A Slow Descent into Death, The Return Journey. The return was a nightmare. Exhausted, malnourished, and disheartened, the men began to succumb to the elements. Evans suffered a fall and died of a head injury and scurvy. Oates, crippled by frostbite, slowed the team down. In an act of extraordinary self-sacrifice, he walked into a blizzard to save the others, saying, "I am just going outside and maybe some time." Scott, Wilson, and Bowers pushed forward. But a sudden blizzard trapped them just 11 miles from a vital food depot. With dwindling fuel and supplies, they made one final camp. There they perished, writing letters to loved ones and maintaining their dignity to the end. Chapter 6. Discovery and Grief. Cherry faces the unthinkable. Cherry-Garrard, stationed back at base camp, waited for Scott's return. Days turned into weeks. Concern became dread. When the worst was confirmed, he joined the search party. On November 12, 1912, they discovered the final camp. Inside the snow-covered tent were the frozen bodies of Scott, Wilson, and Bowers, curled against one another. With them were journals, letters, and photographs. Cherry was entrusted with bringing them home, a task heavier than the coldest night. The grief among the survivors was immense. A national tragedy had unfolded on a silent, white stage. Chapter 7. The Return to Civilization. Memory is a Burden. Back in England, Scott's death became legendary. He was memorialized as a tragic hero. But Cherry, survivor of the worst journey, witness to greatness and horror, felt isolated. He struggled with guilt and insomnia, tormented by what he had seen and endured. Years later, on the advice of George Bernard Shaw, he began to write his story. He didn't glamorize the journey. He exposed its harshness, its irrational moments, and its immense emotional cost. The result? The Worst Journey in the World, a masterpiece of exploration literature, blending scientific observation, historical chronicle, and raw human confession. Legacy, endurance, sacrifice, and the human spirit. Though it failed to achieve all its aims, the Terra Nova expedition became an enduring tale of human perseverance. Cherry's account reminds us not just of the grandeur of discovery, but of its consequences. His companions were not superheroes. They were men, fragile and brave, who chose to challenge the impossible. Cherry-Garrard ends with haunting wisdom. Polar exploration is at once the cleanest and most isolated way of having a bad time which has been devised. Final thought. The worst journey in the world is more than a tale of exploration. It's a haunting meditation on the limits of human endurance, the depth of loyalty, and the meaning of sacrifice. Cherry-Garrard does not glorify suffering. Instead, he presents it with honesty, humility, and sorrow. In recounting the brutal hardships of Scott's expedition, he ensures that their courage is never forgotten, and their tragedy never dismissed. Polar exploration is at once the cleanest and most isolated way of having a bad time which has been devised. Apsley Cherry-Garrard. This book remains one of the most harrowing and human accounts of exploration ever written, a reminder that the most extraordinary journeys often come at the greatest cost.